Confession without recipient is performance art, not communication. Consider what confession actually requires. Recipient, specific person hearing specific words from specific source at specific moment. Confession demands directness, demands courage to speak to someone rather than about someone, demands vulnerability of actually revealing rather than vaguely suggesting. So, when title promises someone's confessing their true feelings, when it declares they need you and miss you, when it presents this as revelation you're about to receive, ask yourself where this confession is happening. Who's speaking it? To whom? In what format does it arrive? Because if confession is happening in reading designed for mass consumption, if it's being broadcast to everyone who clicks rather than directed to a specific person who needs to hear it, if it's performance of vulnerability rather than actual vulnerability, then it's not confession. It's theater. It's someone confessing to audience while pretending to confess to person. And you're here watching, hoping theater is real, hoping confession is yours, hoping the they in that title is your they. The missing is about you specifically. The needing applies to your absence from someone's life. But it doesn't, can't, won't. Because real confession doesn't happen in titles consumed by strangers. Real confession happens in conversation, in text sent to specific person, in call made to actual recipient, in face-to-face moment where vulnerability meets vulnerability and something real exchanges between two specific humans. Everything else is just content, just performance, just vague promises activating your hope that someone somewhere is finally ready to be honest about how they feel about you. Scalp tingling like static electricity building beneath surface. True feelings, interesting modifier, true as opposed to what, false feelings, performed feelings, strategic feelings presented for effect rather than arising from genuine experience. And if we're now getting true feelings, if this is moment of honesty after period of dishonesty, what does that say about everything that came before? What does it reveal about foundation relationship was built on if true feelings were hidden, suppressed, misrepresented? Because here's uncomfortable reality about true feelings. If someone's been hiding them, if they've been presenting false version of their emotional experience, if they've been strategic about what they reveal and conceal, that's information. That's data about their capacity for honesty, their comfort with vulnerability, their willingness to show up authentically versus perform acceptably. And sure, everyone hides sometimes, everyone moderates what they reveal based on context, timing, readiness. Everyone has internal experience that doesn't match external presentation. That's human. That's normal. That's navigating social reality with appropriate boundaries and self protection. But there's difference between appropriate privacy and strategic dishonesty, between protecting yourself while building trust and performing false version of yourself to achieve specific outcome, between gradual revealing as relationship deepens and sudden confession of true feelings that contradict everything you've been showing. So if someone's confessing true feelings now, if they're finally being honest after being something else before, why now? What changed? What made dishonesty unsustainable? What broke through whatever was preventing honesty previously? And more critically, can you trust true feelings that emerge only after false ones were presented first? Can you build on foundation of finally admitted truth after structure of performed persona? Can confession undo history of misrepresentation? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what they're confessing. Depends on why they hid. Depends on whether confession is taking responsibility for dishonesty or just revealing feelings while avoiding accountability for having hidden them. Temples throbbing with rhythm that doesn't match my heartbeat. They need you in their life. Need. That word, that claim, that assertion of requirement, necessity, inability to function adequately without you, and we're supposed to hear that as flattering, supposed to feel validated by being needed, supposed to interpret someone's inability to be okay without us as proof of our importance, our value, our worth. But need isn't love, need is dependence. Need is deficiency seeking fulfillment from external source. Need is I'm not whole and you complete me, dressed up as romantic declaration instead of being recognized as psychological problem requiring internal work rather than external person. Because whole people don't need other people. They want them, they choose them, they prefer having them in their lives over not having them. But they're capable of being okay, of functioning, of experiencing well being even when preferred people aren't available. Whole people have needs, sure, need for connection generally, need for intimacy, for belonging, for mattering to others. But they don't need specific person. They create lives where needs get met through multiple sources, through community, through diverse relationships, through connection to self that doesn't depend on any single external person being present. So when someone says they need you in their life, when they frame their desire for connection as necessity rather than preference, when they make their well being dependent on your availability, that's not romantic. That's warning sign. That's indication they haven't done work of becoming whole, of developing internal resources, of building life that works with or without you in it. And you want that responsibility, want to be someone's essential source of well being, want the pressure of someone's functioning depending on your continued presence, want to know that if you leave, if you create distance, if you prioritize yourself, someone's life falls apart because they need you? Or do you just want to feel important? Want validation of mattering enough that someone can't imagine life without you? Want reassurance that you're not optional, not replaceable, not someone who could be swapped out for anyone else who provides similar functions? Because those are different motivations, and confusing them leads to accepting need as proof of love when really it's proof of dependence. When really it's someone outsourcing their well being to you instead of developing capacity to generate it internally. Sinuses, feeling congested even though I'm not sick, creating pressure behind eyes. Miss you so much. Nostalgia, longing. Focus on absence rather than presence. Focus on what was or what could be rather than what is. Focus on you being somewhere else instead of creating life that works in your current configuration. Because Missing someone occasionally is normal, natural, human response to caring about someone who's not currently accessible. You think about them, wonder how they are, feel slight ache of their absence. Then you continue living your life because you're whole person capable of functioning whether they're present or not. But missing someone so much, missing them with intensity that requires confession, missing them in a way that disrupts your ability to be present with your actual life, that's not sweet. That's not proof of depth of feeling. That's inability to be here now because you're stuck there, then, or there elsewhere. And that inability, that being so consumed by someone's absence that you can't engage with your present reality, that's not about them. That's about you, about your capacity to be present, about your ability to let go, about whether you've developed internal resources sufficient to generate meaning, connection, purpose, independent of specific person's availability. So, if someone's confessing they miss you so much, if their missing is so intense it requires announcement, if their longing is so consuming it interferes with their capacity to live, that's not necessarily invitation you want to accept. That's not necessarily dynamic you want to re-enter. That's not necessarily person who's done work required to show up healthily in relationship. That's someone stuck, someone unable to move forward, someone so focused on what they don't have that they can't appreciate or build with what they do have. Someone who's made you responsible for their ability to be present with their life instead of developing that capacity themselves. And reconnecting with someone in that state that doesn't create healthy relationship, that creates dynamic where you're responsible for alleviating their missing, for filling their emptiness, for being present enough that they can finally stop longing and start living. That's burden, not love. Burden disguised as devotion, responsibility disguised as being cherished. Collarbones feeling like they're trying to rotate forward, creating hunch. I have to consciously correct, confessing their true feelings. They need you, they miss you so much. 3 related claims, 3 variations on same theme. Someone experiencing internal state they're attributing to your absence and now confessing that attribution to someone. Maybe you, maybe everyone, maybe just performing confession publicly while avoiding actually communicating privately. But let's assume best case. Let's assume someone specific genuinely does have these feelings, genuinely is experiencing this need and missing, genuinely wants to confess to you specifically. So what? What do you do with that information? What does their internal state require from you? What obligation does their confession create? What response does their missing demand? None. No obligation, no required response, no automatic action that must follow from their confession. Because their feelings are theirs. Their need is theirs to address through internal work, not yours to meet through returning. Their missing is theirs to process, to learn from, to use as catalyst for developing capacity to be present even when preferred people aren't available. You don't owe them alleviation of their discomfort, don't owe them return to dynamic that may have ended for good reasons. Don't owe them second chance or hearing or consideration just because they've decided to confess feelings they've been having. You can choose to engage, can choose to listen, can choose to consider whether reconnection serves you, but you're not required to. Their confession doesn't create debt you must repay. Their missing doesn't obligate your return. Their need doesn't automatically make you responsible for meeting it. And if you feel obligated, if their confession creates pressure to respond, to return, to alleviate their missing, examine that. Examine whether that pressure comes from genuine desire to reconnect or from conditioning that says you're responsible for other people's emotional states, that you must respond to need, that saying no to someone's confession makes you cruel or cold or wrong. Because it doesn't. Boundaries aren't cruelty. Protecting yourself isn't coldness. Choosing not to return to dynamic that didn't work isn't wrong. It's self-respect. It's wisdom. It's recognizing that someone's feelings, however genuine, don't automatically determine your choices. Lower back muscles spasming slightly, creating awareness of tension I didn't notice building. Let's talk about what this title is actually doing, what it's designed to activate, what hunger it's feeding, because it's not really about someone confessing, it's about you wanting to be confessed to, wanting to hear that you're needed, that you're missed, that your absence matters enough to someone that they can't stay silent anymore. It's about validation, about mattering, about being significant enough that someone experiences your absence as loss rather than relief or neutrality or just absence without particular emotional charge. And that wanting to be missed, that needing to know you matter enough to someone that they experience your absence as painful, that's understandable. Universal, even. Everyone wants to know they matter. Everyone wants to be missed when they're not available. Everyone wants evidence that their presence in others' lives creates positive impact that's noticeable when absent. But building that need for external validation into requirement for well-being, into thing you consume content about, into hope you organize your life around. That's making external source responsible for internal stability. That's outsourcing your sense of worth to whether someone else confirms it through missing you. And that outsourcing creates vulnerability, creates dependence on things you can't control, creates situation where your emotional state depends on other people's feelings about you, other people's capacity to express those feelings, other people's willingness to confess honestly rather than staying silent. You can't control any of that. Can't make someone miss you. Can't force someone to need you. Can't require someone to confess if they're not ready or willing or experiencing feelings worth confessing. So, organizing your emotional well being around hope that someone's about to confess, that someone needs you, that someone misses you, that's giving away your power. That's making stability dependent on external variables. That's setting yourself up for disappointment when confession doesn't come, or comes but doesn't say what you hoped, or comes from wrong person, or comes too late to matter. Internal validation is only source of stability, only foundation you can build on that won't shift based on other people's choices. Only way to experience consistent well being, regardless of whether anyone confesses anything to you. And building that internal validation, developing that self generated sense of worth, creating well being that doesn't require external confirmation, that's hard work. Harder than consuming content promising someone's about to confess. Harder than hoping for validation. Harder than waiting for someone to confirm through their missing that you matter. But it's also only path to actual stability. Only way to be okay regardless of what anyone else does or doesn't do. Only route to freedom from needing external sources to confirm internal worth. Achilles tendons feeling tight, like they might snap if I move wrong, creating careful awareness of how I shift weight. True feelings, need, missing, all internal experiences attributed to external cause. All states of being that arise within someone but get attached to your absence as if your presence or absence controls their internal experience. But it doesn't. You don't control anyone's internal experience. Don't create their feelings. Don't generate their needs. Don't cause their missing. You're just you, existing, making choices, living your life. Their response to that existence, those choices, that life, that's theirs. That's their internal process. That's their responsibility to manage, to understand, to work with, regardless of what you do. So if they have true feelings, those feelings are theirs to examine. If they experience need, that need is theirs to address through developing internal resources. If they miss you, that missing is theirs to process as information about their capacity to be present, to let go, to build life that works regardless of who's in it. None of that is your responsibility. None of that requires your response. None of that obligates your return or your hearing or your consideration. You can choose to engage, can choose to listen if confession actually comes directly to you rather than being performed for audience, can choose to consider reconnection if it serves you. But choosing is different from being obligated. Choosing preserves your agency. Choosing recognizes that their feelings, however genuine, don't determine your path. And if you can't tell difference between choosing and being obligated, if someone's confession of feelings creates automatic sense that you must respond, must consider, must give them chance to explain or reconnect or have needs met, then work on that. Work on recognizing that you're not responsible for other people's emotional experiences. Work on knowing that boundaries are healthy even when someone's confessing genuine feelings. Work on choosing what serves you rather than defaulting to meeting others' expressed needs. Because that work, that development of healthy boundaries, even in face of someone's genuine confession, that's what creates actual relationships. Relationships built on choice rather than obligation, on mutual respect rather than one person's need creating other person's responsibility, on both people being whole, bringing that wholeness to connection rather than one person being empty expecting other to fill them. Whole torso feeling like it needs to twist, release something stuck in rotational plane I can't quite access. So, what's real here? What's actually true underneath promises of confession and declarations of need and assertions of missing? Maybe someone somewhere is experiencing feelings about you. Maybe those feelings are genuine. Maybe they're even planning to confess them. Or maybe nobody's experiencing anything about you specifically, and this title is just vague enough that you can project your hopes onto it, can make it about whoever you want it to be about, can use it to feed fantasy that someone somewhere is finally ready to be honest about how they feel. Either way, here's what matters more than whether someone's confessing. Here's what's actually important. Are you living your life? Are you building your own well being? Are you creating stability that doesn't depend on anyone else's feelings about you? Are you whole enough that someone's confession would be nice to receive but not necessary for your continued functioning? Because if you are, if you've done that work, if you're stable, independent of external validation, then confession, if it comes, becomes interesting data rather than emotional necessity.